Good morning, everyone. Appreciate y'all being here at 10 a.m. It's early after last night, but I'm happy we didn't lose the entire room. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for coming here. I'm hopefully going to inform you a little bit, entertain you a little bit about kind of my niche in the kind of blockchain crypto area. So what I really focus on are real-world service projects that have a blockchain or crypto component to them. So mostly because a little bit of old school. I remember when, mining Bitcoin, kind of did it for fun with extra CPU cycles, rather than purely for like DeFi profit. So this talk is really what I've been working on for the past 2 years. Specifically, the main project that I'm going to talk about today has just exploded. It went from absolutely, nothing out there to now this morning I saw they're almost at 800,000 hotspots providing wireless coverage all over the world, mostly in the United States, and also some clones lease projects coming up. So I did put on here part one because, in my opinion, there's just not enough time to really go into what I believe are the long-term ramifications of this new kind of take on I don't really like the word decentralizing. I like the word distributed a lot better, of distributed telecom, where it rewards all the stakeholders that are out there. Who am I? What do I know? Why am I interested in this type of tech? I'm not going to say here I know everything about every project out there. I would not be surprised at all if somebody came up here, or even during the talk said, "Oh, have you heard of this project?" It's pretty much weekly or daily I hear about another project out there that provides some type of real service. I'm going to talk here about the ones that I believe are more popular, more well-known in kind of this niche area of real-world services. But there are many more that provide a variety of basically tokens for weather data, for door traffic data, for temperature data, for air quality data. There's a whole bunch of these projects out there. But for this talk here, I'm really going to focus on the telecommunications projects, because I believe that those are going to have the biggest impact over the next 5 to 10 years. So why am I into this kind of niche of crypto? Why do I think it's interesting? Why do I think it's actually going somewhere? So mainly because I spent quite a few years working at Verizon Wireless, actually here in Milwaukee. And while I was there, I built tools and deployed just cell sites all over the state, all over the Midwest. Got to travel all over the world, basically bringing up telecommunication services. Spent a lot of time working on routers and switches, working in data centers, flying overseas, setting up cloud services. I set up Verizon's first cloud platform. So I did a lot of work while I was at Verizon. However, as I'm sure everyone's aware, the telecommunication industry isn't exactly known to be innovative. We usually treat it as a local kind of oligopoly or local monopoly for the most part. You've got kind of your bigger players and your smaller players that are out there. Most of the big players, especially wireless telecom, are going to be Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile. And then you've got your smaller players such as US Cellular, which we have here locally as well. So I'm active, extremely active in these projects, not only just as an enthusiast, but also as an investor, a mentor, advisor. So I am a volunteer with the DY Alliance, which is a nonprofit group that is set up to basically provide expertise from people who have a background in telecom for these new projects and pitches that are coming up. So actually this is open on GitHub. Anyone can request one of these projects. If you have an idea, especially there's a shortage in all these projects of having enough programmers, but if you have an idea like, why doesn't your project do this? Or I want to create this new sensor, or I want to use this wireless network in kind of a new novel way, they'll actually give you a bunch of tokens, and it's not a small amount. They'll give you 40, 50, in some cases, over 200 grand. Of course, it's going to be in their token to go and pursue these projects. And the DY Alliance is kind of a nonprofit board that goes through those ideas and say which ones we should go ahead and fund, which ones need more work or shouldn't be funded. Been volunteering with Forum here in Milwaukee for many years. I frequently speak at college campuses such as UW-Whitewater, UW-Oshkosh, UW-Madison. We're lucky here to have quite a few students from those schools here actually volunteering over at the Blockchain Village yesterday and today. I also work with startups. I really focus on local startups here in Wisconsin. With that, there aren't a lot of people who worked in telecom and kind of got out. I appear to be one of the few. So I've been trying to share knowledge with the community as much as I could. So I've been on multiple podcasts, I've done multiple interviews, trying to explain to, quote, normies, how does telecommunications work? What is realistic? What should we be focusing on in order to kind of grow these projects and actually turn them into something that's real, not just a bunch of people buying these wireless telecommunication, quote, miners and jumping in to make a quick buck. How are we going to make this survive for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years and actually hit our project's goals and turn this out of just, yet another crypto project everyone's just in for the money. The reason why I've been really excited about this type of technology is really, in my opinion, wireless communication still today is somewhat poor, meaning that it's extremely expensive, in my opinion. We should be able to bring the cost down with wireless communication. In addition, even today, people have coverage problems. How can we still have coverage problems? We're now on the 5th generation of this wireless technology. We still haven't figured out how to get coverage everywhere, not only in the country, but in the world. And to me, that this shouldn't be this hard since we've been doing this since the 80s. And I'll talk a little bit more about this, but the real goal of these projects are to bring down so that you can get wireless service from a variety of providers at very low cost that you pick. You may even have multiple providers at extremely low cost. By extremely low, I mean maybe 20, 25 bucks a month, maybe less, which is considerably lower than what it costs today. I grabbed some stats here from Accenture. They kind of swagged at, what are the numbers. So the wireless telecommunication industry is a humongous industry. We've got millions of people working in the industry. There's tremendous impact on the economy and as well as the revenue that they bring in. So it's an extremely old industry that I think just isn't innovating fast enough to keep up. So as I mentioned earlier, the cost here, in my opinion, could be a lot lower. The average cost here, I pulled up one study here, is about $113, but it's very common for people to pay, in my opinion, around $100 a month for an average unlimited plan with the major carriers, Verizon or AT&T. T-Mobile can be somewhat more affordable. And we've seen actually, some other projects try to take this on. So famously, we saw Google with the Loon project say we're going to put up hot air balloons, and those air balloons are going to provide wireless service and kind of beam that around, and that project ended up not going anywhere and being discontinued. The latest one that's gotten a lot of attention, of course, is Starlink. So outside of having some latency issues, it's ubiquitous. It does provide a lot of, I think, more competition to kind of bring down some of these prices and get more available in major towns and cities to where you got to pick either Spectrum or AT&T or another incumbent provider, and that's it. You've got more choice out there, creates more competition, brings the price down. So we've been very, very lucky here in the United States, mostly because of the FCC. I still today don't quite understand how we got so lucky. We have one of the, really the best wireless spectrum rules in the entire world. And I don't know quite how it happened. It's still amazing to me. The really two key innovations that happened with the FCC is they deregulated a lot of formerly military spectrum, so CBRS. So it stands for Citizens Band Radio Service. So basically what they've done, similar to what you use with Wi-Fi and your 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz, they said, we're going to create a spectrum that you can use for broadband communications, and anyone can use it. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to pay like typically the carriers are paying billions for the spectrum for the entire country. Anyone can use it. There is a licensing process for people who certify these installs. When you get into cellular communications, there are some barriers up there. However, many of the projects have put together kind of remote services to make it so easy for anyone who doesn't really understand all this to still have this done in their home or business. The second part of it is what they call OTAR rules, and it's not a bad thing. Basically, those rules override your local HOA, even your state law, to allow you to put up broadband communication networks. So you can override it, and this has been reaffirmed in court multiple times, saying that if you want to put a giant antenna on your roof now, there are, of course, FCC regulations for safety and height limitations. But as long as you follow the rules, you can keep it up, and the HOA can't complain it's ugly and force you to take it down. And those are very, very strong rules there. So really, those are the two key innovations that even make this possible. If we didn't have CBRS spectrum, these projects would have been dead. They never would have gotten off the ground 3 years ago, and really started to take off 2 years ago. And the ability to actually have federal law from the FCC that's actually strong, has some teeth to it, to allow people to do this is just incredible. So those are really the incentives that came up and made this possible on a theoretical level. From this, the largest network that I'm going to talk about is Helium. What they did is they saw these rule changes and said, we should take advantage of this. Why don't we start building a communications network that's built on a blockchain to where anyone can put up broadband service in the world, although it's more popular, in my opinion, in the United States, mostly because we have friendlier spectrum rules. And we actually share what you make with whoever sets it up. So when you put up one of these hotspots, cell sites, microcells, you can call them different things, but they all provide wireless service, you actually get paid in real time when those are up in service. Now, even when you do that, no one's going to do it, off the bat, because great, I bought this usually expensive miner, and it's not going to pay very much if no one uses it. So they've really innovated with in that space to influence people to do it by creating a new approach to that called proof of coverage. So these miners, when they go up and start providing wireless service, they actually talk to each other. One sends out basically kind of a hello packet to everybody in the area, like, can you hear me? This is my unique global ID. And then the ones around it listen, they hear it. And then they say, yes, I hear you. And then the network protocol says, great, you're actually there. You're not lying by your location within, maybe 100 meters. And we're going to reward you for that. So you can get paid even if you're not actually taking on any traffic. Now that's very exciting. It makes it easier to deploy and pay people early. On the flip side, it somewhat defeats the purpose of it, which was to actually get traffic on it. But no one's going to jump on one of these networks if they don't exist. So that's how they fix the problem of actually getting people to say, okay, the ROI on this is this. If I do this install at this location, this makes monetary sense. There's plenty of people who do it and don't care about the money as well. But the very large, what I would call multi-service operators, and I'm one of them as well, go in there and say, I want to grow the network as well, but most people don't understand this technology. Maybe as soon as you mention it's blockchain or crypto, have no interest in it at all due to its bad reputation. So we make it simple. We'll basically manage it for people and then just pay them every month and help them have a good install that we have some confidence will make a certain amount. Now, I mentioned other projects here as well. Because this first network, the Helium network, has been so popular, it spawned many copycats out there, and I mean that in a good way. They've taken it and changed some things about the protocol and said, we're going to do that as well, but we're going to tweak it a little bit. So that's kind of the exciting part. Pollen is one project that's taken that on. And what they've done is they said, well, Helium says we want to do all wireless communication, which by all, it really comes down to LoRaWAN-based communication, cellular communication, and Wi-Fi communication. So their long-term plan is to say, you can have one of these, what they call a miner, that provides all three of those wireless services from your house or from your business, from your rental unit, and people can use all three and you will get rewarded for that. Pollen has said that's too complicated, we don't believe in Wi-Fi, we don't believe in LoRaWAN, we're just going to do cellular. So they're only deploying a 4G cellular network. Now, there are many more other projects out there. I mentioned Rebel Fi, which still hasn't quite gotten off the ground, and there's half a dozen more right behind it. So, going into more detail here, this is probably the first time you've ever heard of CBRS spectrum, and it's fairly recent. Didn't really come into effect until the beginning of 2020, which is around when the pandemic started. So that we've got 150 megahertz, which is not very much in the cellular world. Typically, you're going to want 200, 300, 400, 500, as much as you can get. And it's in the 3.5 gigahertz band. That's not a great band for long-range communications. You usually want something closer to 600 megahertz. The higher you go, you get higher bandwidth, but you typically have less ability to penetrate buildings, trees, etc. But they open that up, and now anyone can use it. So it's like being able to, just like it creates the ability so that anyone can set up cellular service, kind of like buying a Wi-Fi router, which is really, in my opinion, really innovative. So OTARD stands for over-the-air reception devices. And what it does is really protects anyone who wants to expand the broadband network. This somewhat came in from some feedback that a lot of operators were kind of sick of getting pushbacks from the city, the county, the state, HOAs saying, oh, you can't install this, you can't put this up because it's ugly. And they said, well, in order for the United States to be competitive, we need we need infinite broadband. And we need to promote the rights of people who want to expand broadband networks. So I think we got really lucky. I don't think we get one thing we got two. In other countries, it's not like this at all. There is no kind of concept of cellular unlicensed communication. There is no concept of the right to expand cellular networks. You have to buy it. You have to work with existing telecom providers. It's a very slow, cumbersome, and expensive process. So, in my opinion, these are all taking different approaches. I do like Helium that's going after everything that's out there. So they're saying we're going to try everything. We're going to see what works and give people a choice so you can use what they call utility tokens from all this. So when you actually, this is their version of proof of work. It's really proof of wireless service and actual data communications. And these are all public. Over in the blockchain village, I've got live screens up. You can see where they all are. You can also see what everybody makes. You can see whose wallet owns them. You don't know who it is, but you can see the wallet that they have. So it's radically more transparent than anything that I've ever seen in the telecom industry. Much more affordable, and that's what's allowed it to grow so quickly. So how does this kind of work if you want to do it and join one of these networks? So you have to buy the equipment. It can range from a small device to a very large one like what's pictured there, offering 4G LTE service. Powered by a solar panel and a battery on the top of a mountain or in an attic, top of a roof. They're all over the place. And that's the equipment that you need in order to provide that coverage. Next, you got to pick, you got to see what projects are out there that's compatible with that equipment. A lot of them either build the equipment or certify the equipment themselves. You have to go through them. Otherwise, they have a list of approved manufacturers to where you can just buy it, onboard it, which is really attaching it to your wallet, and then once it's up and in service, you start earning from it. A lot of manufacturers have jumped onto this, and this includes companies here in Wisconsin as well. So Base Cells, their North American headquarters is actually in Madison, and they provide a lot of the 4G LTE equipment actually for almost all these projects. So Wisconsin is a part of this innovation as well, and it's actually helping the local economy in this tremendous demand for this equipment. So I mentioned proof of coverage, and I want to explain a little bit, what does that mean? That's a very new kind of concept, and it's really one out there saying, can you hear me? And then at least one says, I hear you, that validates you are physically near me, you're going to get a reward for that. Now, they've had a lot of issues with people trying to game this, so just because no one hears you, what if that other one is also next to you? Or what if somebody buys 50 of them and puts some in their basement? Yes, that's happening, and they're working on different measures to kind of, through data analysis, determine if it appears to be real or appears to be fake. This is an ongoing issue, especially with a lot of Chinese installations, Russian installations, to where they have no interest in providing any real service. They just want to get the tokens and get paid. So where are we at right now? So. I put a screenshot in here of Helium. It's only from a month ago, but it's already quite a bit bigger. If you go back 2 years, there was nothing in Wisconsin. And now here we've got thousands of these, especially in dense metro areas. But they're in Appleton, they're in Green Bay, they're in Marquette University, up by the finger, where we touch the Michigan-Wisconsin border. They're all over the place. And there's actually Facebook groups. There's one here in Milwaukee that talks about people doing installations and sharing equipment and getting advice on what is a good installation. Does anyone want to buy one? that kind of stuff. So it's really blown up. It also was featured in a February article in the New York Times about how maybe we're actually finding real-world services and a real benefit to crypto besides just a lot of degen projects or decentralized finance projects out there that are purely for the money. So I mentioned a new project that just went public, allowing anyone to participate about 3 weeks ago. And this is the Pollen network. So they're taking a much more focused approach. Same idea, same proof of coverage mechanism that Helium has, but what Pollen does is they actually just do cellular communications, and they actually give you eSIMs. So if you have an iPhone 11 or newer, or most Android phones from fall of last year to this year, if they support band 48, which you can look up online, they actually participate in this network, and because you have multiple SIMs, that secondary SIM is also active as well. And that secondary SIM will listen on band 48, the CBRS spectrum, and if it sees one of these cell sites, you get rewarded because you confirmed it's actually in that area. It can actually see it. They've taken a slightly different approach with it. They also use some different terminology. Cell sites are flowers. Validators with people who validate the coverage with SIM cards are called bumblebees. It's kind of funny the terminology they use. But they're very focused on cellular communications. Some of the most exciting news is really the partnerships, because these are great projects on their own, but what's going to make them successful in the long term is going to be actual normal people using these, whether they know it or not. So there's been a lot of partnership announcements recently. So Helium Network plans to launch their cellular network this fall, and they've already secured a roaming agreement with Boost Mobile and a couple other MVNO providers. So fairly low bandwidth. They've also got a couple of MVNOs I've never heard of for data-only SIM cards. Microsoft has now partnered up with the Helium network. So if you build an IoT device, and you're looking for an international IoT network that tends to be more affordable, you can do that natively working with them. So you can build an IoT device on their Azure IoT platform and just select Helium as one of the networks that you use for wireless communications. So it's very easy, it's very quick, it's very affordable. And these partnerships that come up, they also work with Lime Scooters. I learned this. We actually have IoT mouse traps now. So when they go off and say, hey, I caught a mouse, it uses the Helium network. That's crazy. So I've tried to talk to local companies in Wisconsin who I think could take advantage of this for IoT style communications for either household appliances or for energy, I don't want to say independence, but energy diversity, who want to have like another network, maybe outside of a cellular network, to communicate on that may be more affordable. But this is still very new. Hasn't been around that long, and most enterprises are very reluctant to consider these as viable alternatives because they're so new, which I think makes some sense. But in my opinion, if they keep on growing and the economics make sense and they are reliable, they are eventually going to start getting some bigger and bigger partnerships. The ball's already started rolling. It's just going to accelerate over the next couple of years. So I mentioned here, I'm one of those kind of multi-service operators. I simplify all this. I have the equipment on hand. I help install it. I advise them where to put it. So for instance here, this is what it looks like when I check it out. So I will do kind of a remote, what they call a remote site survey. And what I do is I kind of see how can one node talk to another and look at that coverage. And a lot of this depends on height of these units, where their antennas are at, as well as the natural topography of the land. But the real thing that matters with all this is how many are there. If there are too many in a small area, they have to share the rewards. You're going to make a lot less, and that's designed and built in. Like if there's already coverage there, we don't need another one. So there's kind of sweet spots that you want to check out, and that's where you get the most reward. And these kind of remote site survey services that are out there, some are free, some are paid, allow you to kind of do this, to see what is the map of the land, where they're going to install it, and kind of give you a fairly reliable estimate of what you're going to make. So find good locations, find the owner, whether that's a landlord, someone with a private piece of property, someone who has a lot of tall trees, a business. A lot of people are focusing on indoor as well, especially with the cellular networks. People are expecting more partnerships to be announced. So they're saying, hey, your business can make extra, quote unquote, fairly passive income, because a lot of these are set it and forget it. They do remote software upgrades and do remote troubleshooting. And you get additional income. The only price you have is bandwidth, which you already have an internet connection or something like that. That's no additional cost. And internet, depending which miner you buy, that can be $4 a year to 10, 20 bucks a month. Depends how much power they're using and how big of an install you have. But it tends to be a win-win for everybody. So because this network is public, anyone can see roughly where they're at. You can see what all these different names make, and all the names are random of all these hotspots. You can go to this Explorer site today and see what all of these different locations make. And from my experience, I talk about quality of the install. What I really mean is height of the install, height of the antenna, and using good quality kind of antenna lines. Like LMR 400 is the most popular one because it has the least amount of loss, to make sure that you have good, strong, consistent signal will help you earn the most rewards. How do these operators make money? These numbers are, with what's happened this week, the numbers are a little bit lower because crypto's dropped in price. But basically, I try to make it so that the person, at least if it's a residential install, they at least make enough to make a dent in their internet cost. And then from there, we split the earnings so they make that. And from an operator point of view, you want to pay off the equipment that you've installed with them. But after that, it's fairly passive. And there's a variety of large operators out there. Some split 20, some split 50, some split 70, some split 80. Some, as long as it's online for 2 years and they make enough money, they give it to you, so that will actually transfer ownership of it to you, which is extremely generous, in my opinion. I was like, coming from telecom, I was like, that's just like mind blowing. They'd never do that ever. They're like, why would we want to, give ownership of these assets to our customer? That doesn't make any sense. It makes sense if you want to grow the network and you're not purely looking at profit in some cases. So I mentioned in the beginning, you're really trying to, as a part of one of these projects, trying to bring down the cost of wireless connectivity everywhere in the world. It's the best here in the US due to regulatory reasons, but it's really interesting, thinking about this from the project's point of view, whether it's Helium or Pollen, because then they basically are getting infinite bandwidth in aggregate, not at every site. Obviously, people aren't going to have infinite bandwidth on residential spectrum, but they are going to be able to have the ability as a project overall to say, yes, if you have an IoT device, we are confident it's going to be reliable, it's going to be available, and you're going to have all the bandwidth that you need. So, and they do have some built-in redundancy in the protocol, so that, let's see, the nearest hotspot to you doesn't have enough bandwidth, so it will actually forward those packets to its nearby neighbors, and they have more bandwidth. So there's some protocol kind of redundancy built in. Downsides, well, there's plenty of downsides. Besides it, being associated with blockchain or crypto, you can't control the quality of the install. The people who buy these, and this is another thing coming from telecom, it's just crazy, they never allow, is they don't control where you put it. You can buy one of these, put it in the basement, you put it on the first floor, you put it by the window, you can put it in the kitchen. Those aren't good places to put it, but you can put it there, you're not going to make much. And also, if you put it on the roof, you buy a cheap antenna off eBay, you can do that as well. You're going to have problems, you can put more noise on the network, and lower the quality of the network, the ability to use it, but they don't control that. They try to just influence that through the rewards mechanism. They can't tell you, oh, well, you actually have a cellular unit. You better have at least 100 meg of symmetric internet, so up and down. They don't do that either. So if you're using the service, and let's say your cell phone says, well, I want to download a big file or stream, in 4K, might not be able to support that. In gaming, something I mentioned a little bit here and there. Gaming is a big issue still with all these networks. People who are studying the white papers, taking apart this equipment, looking at the code, are finding multiple ways to get paid these utility tokens without actually helping the network grow or improving the quality of the network. So That's an ongoing issue. They are getting better, they are innovating, they are banning groups of manufacturers, groups of users who are working together to kind of defeat the purpose of the network. And I think that's going to be an ongoing thing. They just keep raising the bar. There is no secure network, it just gets better. So I mentioned in the beginning, like this is the part one. So in my opinion, this wireless connectivity kind of revolution is just the beginning. This will make it, in my opinion, in the next several years, more affordable and give you more choices to where you get wireless services from, if they are successful, which is a big if. But what do you do once you have affordable, ubiquitous communication? You need to use it somehow. You need to have applications that use it. There are other projects coming up that are focusing on edge compute and distributed edge compute, to where anyone can throw up a server and say, now we're competing with Azure Cloud, with Google Cloud, with AWS. Those projects, there's multiple of them already in the works. Those are much smaller, much less well known, but they are coming to say, well, if you have fairly infinite bandwidth, we're going to give you infinite compute at low prices, and anyone can participate in that as well. And I think that's in the next 5 to 10 years, going to start working this. Today, they're so early, they can't even think about working together directly in most cases, but that's where I think it's going. Thank you for kind of listening to me talk about this kind of niche of real-world crypto or real-world services provided by crypto networks. I did mention I am an operator. My site is up there. If you're more curious about this, feel free to email me or send me a DM on Twitter. I'm not trying to grow my network. I'm really trying to spread knowledge of how they work and why they're doing this for people who are interested. And like I mentioned earlier, we do have communities here in Milwaukee, Madison, throughout the state of people doing this. The most common thing you see is somebody on Facebook Marketplace going, who wants a free miner? And they split the income. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, anything that I went over.
The CBRS frequency, what is that range?
Yeah, I think I had that. I can go back to
3750 to 3900.
right there. 3550 to 3700. Yeah. Yes.
What's the price of one of these cells, and how much is the electrical cost of running one?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So for a Helium LoRaWAN miner, the costs have drastically went down because the token price has crashed. Today it's about $350 per unit. The electrical use is about $4 a year.
$4 a day?
Like a year. Yeah. They use
I thought you
about
said that's low rod though, not 5G, right?
So that is for the LoRaWAN units. The cellular units use considerably more electricity. That's going to be closer to probably $10 to $20 a month. And those units are dramatically more expensive. So those are going to range, they'll start at $1,000 and go up to $7,000 today. Considerably more expensive. Also because of the band they have to use, at best you're going to get like 5 to 7 miles of range in ideal conditions.
What units do you have in your network?
I have everything. I have all these. Yes. Oh, sorry. Oh, you went first? Okay. You want to go first? Yeah.
DC deployed in a mesh manner without underlying infrastructure?
So as far as the, what we call in telecom the backhaul or the internet connection, a lot of these run on consumer today. And surprisingly, Spectrum, AT&T, they know people are doing this. They're doing deep packet inspection. Because they're too afraid of losing customers, this is my opinion, they are not banning people from using this, because technically this is commercial service that a lot of people are breaking their agreement on and using for commercial service. As of today, I have not seen any carrier in the world cancel people's internet for this, but that is a risk.
I'm just asking for between each node, if I have a large space of desert and I want to daisy chain them to get internet out of both ways, can that be done wirelessly?
No.
Okay.
No, not natively. They should each have their own wired or wireless backhaul.
Okay.
Yeah, but daisy chaining them. There are some manufacturers working on that technology. However, as of today, none of them have launched a test net or a production network. Yeah.
You said the key words before, commercial service. There's a lot of money changing hands here. People are having to buy equipment, people are earning tokens, the project creators, I'm sure, are getting some money. Users are having to pay for this one way or another. And it's all running on free spectrum. Why should this commercial service exist on free spectrum?
Because the FCC allows it. The idea is that they want to spur innovation. They actually support the mission of the spectrum to bring down the cost of commercial service. So that's why they're on board, which is also pretty incredible. It's not like, kind of like the 2.4 or 5 gigahertz band for Wi-Fi. They actually want it to be used commercial for this. But I mean, that's used commercially as well. A lot of wireless ISPs use that space. Yeah.
So if I want to consume this service just as an individual, is there like a company I can roll up to and be like, here's your SIM card, you can now go on the Helium network?
Yes. So actually, the Helium network has a dedicated space. They have recommended hardware builds, kits, manufacturers, and code examples. You could have this up and running in an hour.
No, but I mean like literally for like my own phone, my laptop, like I want to use the network to do what I want to do.
Gotcha. So you want to use a SIM card for data access.
Right.
Yeah. Today you can do that. Pollen is the only one that has production cellular service, and today they only have eSIM. So you have to have an eSIM compatible hardware. Helium is launching with physical SIMs. They're $50 each this fall, so where you can use it as a data only network.
Okay. Awesome.
Mobility.
As far as
Moving from cell site to cell site. You can't just switch carrier to carrier.
right, so in telecom, right, you have seamless handover over mostly the S1 protocol between cell sites. The technical, these are actually, it's kind of funny. Each hotspot / microcell in cellular today is actually technically a different network with a different mobile core. So when they do a handoff, they're actually handing off to a separate network between cells, versus if you're on Verizon, they're just handing to the same cell within the same network. So the handovers aren't as clean and seamless. They do work, however, but they tend to be a little slower. But yes, you hand over between cells.
How do you know, so they're different cores, like different LTE cores that
Yes.
each cell site is using?
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's insane.
So there are, in the next 2 years, they are planning to launch a shared cloud core, but that is still pretty far out. So what they're actually using under the hood is what's called the Magma open source LTE core project. So when they put up one of these nodes, it's not just the eNode B, so the cell site and the antenna. They also put the entire mobile core actually in a computer that attaches to that as well. So it's actually an entire network. But that network, all of the billing information is integrated directly with the main Helium protocol, so that you get your tokens paid based on data transfers, as well as other sites are able to see activity from the core. So even though they're separate cores, here's the crazy part: they actually have the same network ID. So it's very kludgy.
So you mentioned something in the load balancing scenario where one node has low bandwidth and is able to hand it off to another cell. How does that, can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, that's on the LoRaWAN Helium network. So it is possible for one to be up and maybe briefly lost internet. It can actually retransmit that to nearby cells and say, I'm forwarding this to you. A consequence of doing that, however, is that you will not earn for that data transfer, since you are brokering it, not actually allowing it to hand off to the public internet.
LoRa's got a potential range of, I mean, if you've got a high enough cell, 100 miles, very long distance.
Yeah, the one in my attic goes 20 miles. So it's got significant range with extremely low power. The most I've seen is a kilometer, but that's pretty crazy. That's usually bouncing over the water.
I'll have a question then. What kind of antenna and how much power are you running to get 20 miles out of LoRa?
The same thing, $4 a year
Oh, how much?
over LoRaWAN.
How many milliwatts? What power?
Oh, the actual power of the
Yeah.
unit. So they, those are under, those max out at a watt, but they're typically using less than that. That's at full power.
Okay.
Is it Omni or actual antenna?
So LoRaWAN right now are almost universally omni. For the cellular networks, they are directional. There are some omni as well, but those tend to do a traditional, like a telecom, like a 3-sector or 2-sector design. All right, I think that's it. Well, I appreciate everybody coming. Hopefully I help you learn a little bit more about what's going on in everybody's backyards here in Wisconsin, and about some actually real world services going on. Hopefully blockchain for good, but we've got a long way to go. Appreciate talking with everybody today. If you want to learn more or talk to me in person, I plan to be over at Blockchain Village most of the day today and talk about this in more detail. But appreciate your time.